Hey, this is Jack Downs with a little video for people who are in class on Friday, September 29th. Hope you get into class soon, and let's look at the schedule. Today is our second of two classes where we kind of move away from technical production, audio, video, and into ethics law. We talked particularly about copyright, which is a special concern to people making audio and video. Talked about that last time. Now we're going to talk about more general ethics and law things. You have ethics and law reading, plus reading from your textbook, which relates to it too. What is due this class though is the audio Vox Pop. One set of scripts and a checklist per team, 2 files from each team member on Brightspace. So if there's some delay in that because you're not in class, because you were sick or something like that, please move ahead as quickly as you can to get that done. And again, if you're unable to do it with a partner, please talk to Jess about doing it with her. Also, I gave you for this class chapters 16 and 17, and here's the down below here in the schedule are the things you should know from the 16, 17, and the ethics and law reading. And what's due next class? Well, there is a nothing due next class, but on Wednesday, not Monday, next class is Monday, but on Wednesday there will be a quiz on ethics and law and copyright and the reading, and you can use an index card. You could begin preparing for it, I will also go over stuff on Monday, review a little bit of what will be on the quiz. Monday we're going to begin with intro to video though too, so that will be an important class. And let's continue. I'm going to do a little presentation today about libel and ethics and more. Libel is the big bad boogeyman of the legal things that you can face when doing audio and video and writing, in journalism in particular. Libel is a very active part of the law. If we look and see what things come up in a search about libel today, we'll see that there's a lot of things involving AI again, involving libel, lawsuits, and a number of court decisions involving libel. And for instance, the new CEO of Fox, the younger Murdoch, had to pay this huge amount of money for someone who he accused of libel. Also, there's an interesting decision that was in the favor of some newspapers and Associated Press about libel. So libel is an active part of the law. Lots of stuff happening. In past times I showed things that have to do with ethics that were about deep fakes. But these days, deep fakes have become more common, and there's less probably for you to be surprised about with them, that there's fake video out there and fake audio too. But now AI makes creating that even easier in lots of ways. So it's something we always have to be concerned about, is the audio and video that we are, perhaps someone's giving us to use or something, or someone's showing us as a journalist. Is it real, right? And it's getting tougher to tell. So I won't bother showing you those links otherwise, though. I will say that with the major, these things involving libel, we talk about defamation. So you need to know what that is. It's when we damage someone's reputation with false information. Damage someone, usually their reputation. There could be other damages. It could be damaging them financially based on a business, how much business they do or something too. So it's defamation. And libel is when we publish false information that deliberately, that means with malice, or carelessly, that means with negligence, damages someone's reputation. And slander is sometimes talked about here also. It also damages people, but it's not what we have to worry about. Some people think because you're doing audio or video, that has to do with slander. It's unlikely you'll get sued for slander. Slander involves speech or gestures that are transitory, not recorded and published. So when things are recorded and published, and everything practically is published these days, right? Then it is libel. So that's what you really need to worry about. Libel, yes. Slander, probably not. It's just if I say something right here and it's not recorded and broadcast or published. And defamation is at the heart of both of them. has to do with damaging someone with false information. False information, that's a key point, right? You will have other classes where you go over this stuff in more detail and perhaps actual cases. So this is general information, but it does definitely apply to audio and video too. All right? So what are the 5 elements of libel? You're going to need to know these for the quiz, so write them down. The information must be false. Okay. By the way, this is the person suing you. That's the plaintiff. And these are not criminal cases. These are civil cases. So someone's suing you, asking for money. For them to succeed, they have to prove all these things against the defendant. That's you. That's the content creator who's the one being sued. They have to prove all 5 of these things. The information is false. The damage must be apparent. So there has to be damage shown. There has to be damage. Just because it's false information, it doesn't hurt anybody. That doesn't make it, that is not libel. It must be published. But as I said, publishing can be, you put it on in your blog, you put it on the internet anywhere. Of course, if you put it in the newspaper or broadcast it over a television station, it's published. That's all published. The plaintiff must be identifiable. Okay, so the person who's claiming to have been damaged has to be identifiable. So you can't just damage some nameless thing or some group that's so large that no individual within it can claim to be identified. And defendant must be at fault through negligence or malice. So in other words, you either have to have been shown to be really careless, or in some cases, you have to be shown to have intentionally done it, which is pretty terrible. You knew it was false, or you should have known it was false, and you published it anyway. That would be the malice side of things. So what is negligence? So this is the standard of proof that applies to average people like you and me. Okay? You and me. Someone publishes something terrible about us, which is false. We only have to show that they were careless in the gathering of that information. We don't have to show that they knew it was false. They did it with malice. However, when we're talking about public figures and public officials, certainly elected officials and many other people too, who is a public figure? It changes in different situations. Just know that for those people, that the reporter has to be, or the journalist or the content creator has to be shown to have published this material either knowing that you're lying, knowing it's false, or disregarding the truth, blatant disregard for the truth. In other words, they should have known. It was all the information was there that they should have known it was false. So why does it matter? It matters public versus private people, right? And in other words, you or me going about our daily job as a private person. However, the head of the university, and maybe even some top university administrators, and certainly the mayor of the city and the elected council people, but maybe even the heads of some departments, these people, for one purpose or another, could be called public people, public officials, and that more difficult standard applies to them. And it makes sense in some ways that it should be harder for those people to prove libel because they are in a public position. So remember all those 5 things that have to be proved for libel. The person suing you has to get all 5 of those. But what are the defenses against libel? Well, the defenses against libel are, it's true, boom. All you as a person being sued have to show is one of these things. Or this number 2 one is kind of weird. It's called consent. It means if they told it to you, they shouldn't be able to sue you because it's false. That's very unlikely. That's the situation you're going to be in. But of course, it seems fair. If someone tells you something, they shouldn't be able to turn around and sue you because it was false. Privilege is a much more common defense. It means I was in an official proceeding, like in court, when the court was in session, in a town meeting, or a county meeting, or a city council meeting, or a school board meeting, or the state legislature, when they are in session, in between the time the gavels hit, and they are debating, discussing, presenting information, and so on, and I take notes. I should be able to rely on that information and just publish it. Right? I don't have to go check everything to see if it's true. I can just publish it there from those things. It's often extended to things like police reports and maybe other official reports. I should be able to just publish those things and not have to defend the truth of them myself. But if you go into the Common Council meeting, and before the meeting begins, somebody tells you something that's terribly potentially damaging, and you don't check up on it and you publish it just because it was before or after the meeting, that's no privileged offense, right? It has to be during the meeting. Fair comment and criticism mean it has to be opinion, expressed in an opinion way, in an obvious opinion format. That your opinions, you cannot be sued about those. But what's an opinion and what's a fact? That becomes a problem. So, for instance, here's an example I sometimes use. You are doing your video restaurant reviews, and you talk about this new restaurant in town, and you went there, and you say, I thought the food was terrible, and the service I thought was really slow, and I thought the waiter was rude to me. That's all pretty well defended under opinion, especially if you present it as a review. Okay, but then you say, and there were rats in the kitchen. Okay, that changes everything. That's a demonstrable fact. Are there rats in the kitchen? That's not just your opinion. If there are, okay, you're safe. It's true. There are not rats in the kitchen? All right, you have a big problem. Okay? How about, let me use some other examples. You interview a downtown businessman whose business suffered vandalism. All right? And he says, it's all those college kids. They're all to blame. They're a lazy bunch of criminals. And you publish that. Can the student association turn around and sue you? It's probably true. It's probably not true. It's probably false. Okay? So that part, number one, would probably be true. Was damage apparent? Oh, I don't know. And the problem is, right? The plaintiff must be identifiable. A vague, all those college kids are a lazy bunch of criminals, that doesn't identify anybody. If I talk about a particular college kid, now that person could sue. So you have to be identifiable. Also, let's say you are doing, hey, I'm going to do a story about the mayor and accusations that he spent city money on private trips. Okay, hard-hitting news. You interview a number of city officials who show you travel vouchers that show that the mayor submitted to expensive resorts. The mayor refuses to talk to you about it. You go and you try to get a comment from him, try to get an interview, and he refuses to talk about it. You go and publish a story. Then he holds a news conference and is offering strong evidence that the travel was valid. He was going to conferences which were approved, right? And he says, I'm going to sue that reporter for libel. Does he have a case? Not really. First of all, he's a public official, so he'd have to prove malice, that you practically knew it was true and published it anyway. And you went to him and offered him a chance to clear it up, and he didn't do it. So there's not really a case. You know something else that is not really a case for libel is honest mistakes. So like a typo, that kind of mistake. You know, instead of saying someone is not a criminal, you write they are a criminal, or it gets changed in the editing or something like that. More likely that the kind of mistakes are just like a single letter, something like that. And then immediately the next day, you apologize and run a correction because it was a mistake, but it was a typographical error, right? In general, especially, it holds a lot of weight if you apologize and run a correction of some kind, and this might be some flub in the editing of your audio or video. You apologize and immediately replace it with or put a note on it or something that with you correct the error, right? That's generally thought to be not a grounds for libel. Okay, final example. Here we go. This is a semi-real example that actually a student right here from SUNY Plattsburgh was involved in an internship that he was working in. He's going to do a vox pop, which is where you go and you just collect information on a topic, and decides he's going to do one about the high price of gas, which is a good topic for a vox pop. Talking to people about the high price of gas, and better than that, he's going to go do it at gas stations where he gets people filling up their gas tank and talk to them about gas. Even better idea. And he's, in this case, in my example anyway, in real life he was just taking notes, but in an example, I'm going to say he's doing that with audio or video. So he goes to the Stewart station on Cornelia Street, and a guy there says, he goes to some other gas station, and a guy says, hey, I got my car filled up the other day, or last month, at the Stewart's shop on Cornelia Street, and they sold me gas with water in it, which damaged my engine and cost me hundreds of dollars. So price of gas is one thing, but you got to watch out for faulty gas. And he collects that information and says, wow, that's more interesting than some of the boring comments I got. And includes the boring comments and includes that comment from the guy too, and publishes it the next day. And Stewart's calls and says, we are going to sue you because we can show, first of all, it's false. We have no evidence that there's ever been water or gas, and all of our gas is tested. And we can show that when you published that story, our sales went down that day by this amount. So therefore, you're going to owe us that plus damages. Do they have a case? Was the information false? Well, you can't prove that it was true. In fact, can you find that guy again? In fact, does he have any proof? Did you even ask him? Probably not, right? Does he have proof that the water in his gas came from that gas station? That would be hard to do. So it might be false. Was the damage apparent? They can show it in their receipts for that day. Was it published? Yes, it was. Was the plaintiff identifiable? The corporation, who is an individual, was identified. Was the defendant at fault through negligence or malice? Maybe negligence. They may have a case. In this case, it was handled through insurance and kind of without the actual lawsuit. But it was definitely a big black mark on that young reporter's record. And actually, it should have been on the editors, too, who would have seen that, because everything, including audio and video, should be edited. So we have to look through it, make sure it's safe, and make sure people do a good job. Not just stories, but of course we need to, editors need to look at audio and video, too, or listen to audio and look at video, too. Okay, so let's continue. So now there's more to ethics and law, of course. With audio and video in particular, we have to worry about intrusion. That's trespass or secret surveillance or misrepresentation. Remember, you can't, if you go someplace and misrepresent your identity, right? Say you're somebody else and secretly collect information, that could be defined as invasion of privacy. If you trespass on private property, that can be defined as invasion of privacy, collecting information that way. If you do secret surveillance of someone, so let's say you're recording audio, right? Secretly. Well, you have to know, are you in a one-party state or a two-party state? New York is a one-party state. That means only one person in the conversation needs to know that the recording is happening for it to be legal. So, if I hide a microphone of myself, right, and I secretly record a conversation that I am in, whoops, then in New York, that is legal. Is it right? Should you be doing that? No, you should not. You should not be gathering information without people's permission, without them knowing you're recording. The exception being if you would be putting yourself in significant danger by letting people know who you are and recording openly, right? However, imagine another situation. You are gathering audio, for instance, of a conversation happening somewhere else where you are not involved in the conversation. For instance, you bugged something, or you're recording a phone call you're not involved in, right? Okay, that no longer is legal. That would be secret surveillance. That is not legal in New York without a court order, if you're an official person. And also, let's say you're recording a phone conversation and you have not told somebody. Do you know what state they're in? Do you know what the laws there are? But because there are two-party states that mean in the law in some places is that everybody being recorded has to know they're being recorded. Okay, false light, portraying someone in a false light, an accurate way. That's similar to libel. Some states have that law. It works the same way, we'll say. Public disclosure of private facts. This is one of the rare cases where you can be successfully sued for publishing something that is true. It's true, but it's not newsworthy. The only reason you are publishing is because there's usually what we would call prurient interest, like something involving sex or something else. So you're publishing this information that doesn't have a valid news reason to be published about someone, about their private, intimate details. That's always the discussion is there a significant news reason why you should be able to publish it? So it's unlikely, unless you're some really greasy tabloid, to be caught up in that. And then if you're a public person, you're probably covered anyway. Appropriation. This, in particular, I'll mention for people involved in public relations. This is when you take somebody's voice or likeness and use it to sell something without their permission. In other words, you're going to put it in an ad. You know, if you use someone's voice or likeness in an ad, and you don't have their permission, ideally you need to pay them and have a contract with them. Then they can sue you for appropriation. Since we're talking about ethics, let's just talk briefly about the Society for Professional Journalists, SPJ, and their code of ethics. We are to seek truth and report it as fully as possible. That means not just the narrow truth, but the full truth. A diversity of sources. We have to provide context. We have to serve the public. We have to look for lots of perspectives. It's a full truth. We have to act independently. We have to avoid conflicts of interest. Okay? We have to resist corruption. And so we don't take gifts. We don't do stories about people with whom we are in a power relationship, like someone who's your boss or someone who is your best friend or so on. So we avoid even the appearance of a conflict of interest. We want to minimize harm. So we realize our stories can sometimes hurt people, but that is not our intention. And when we have a choice, when we can still abide by the first choice, the first priority here, and we can minimize harm, we want to minimize harm. And we have to be accountable. When we make a mistake, we need to admit it, we need to correct it. We have to be willing to uncover errors and corruption in journalism in general, and point out other people's errors when we know about them, and point them out to them so they can correct them. Public relations has a code of ethics also. This is from the PRSA, and there are some similar relationships here, you could say. Advocacy. We serve a public interest by acting as responsible advocates for those we represent. So responsible advocates means we're not lying. And that's the second one, honesty. We adhere to the highest standards of accuracy and truth in advancing the interest of those we represent. So there's a difference here. Of course, this all has to do with those we represent. But it's not lying for those people, right? We advance their interests, but we're still honest. Independence. We provide objective counsel to those we represent. So you are hired by someone as a PR professional. You are giving them advice. You have to be independent. You're not supposed to be corrupt either or take bribes or something in the advice you offer them. You have to be accountable for your actions. Loyalty. We're faithful to those we represent. As journalists, we are faithful to our readers, right, and to the public in general. That is also a little bit different, but we still honor the obligation to serve the public interests in public relations. And fairness. We do fairly with client, employers, competitors, peers, vendors, the media, and the general public. We respect all opinions and the right of free expression. So it's a lofty group of code of ethics, and you see it as different than the journalistic one. Okay, special ethical concerns with digital media. You have to know the terms bias, fabrication, plagiarism, conflict of interest. So I will say that the way we write, shoot, edit audio and video can add bias, right? Every camera angle we choose, every piece of music we add, every sound effect we do, every visual effect. You take a video about whatever topic you can imagine that you do as a little news report, and all of a sudden you turn it black and white and you make it grainy and you add some kind of ominous music. It changes the information completely. Sliding audio, moving audio from one place to another within, changing the timeline, changing the order of events. Now, in public relations, when we're representing that client and we're trying to put them in the best light, we're not supposed to be lying in our audio or video, right? But we do things tend to do a lot of things like maybe doing visual effects, maybe adding audio for sure to add a mood or something. So we're advancing their cause. Even little things we do accept, making minor changes when we have like a bad photo or even video that has a bad portion of the image. We do correct that. Now it's true the pixels that we add when we remove the red eye they're not exactly the same pixels that were there originally, but we accept that we do our best to represent reality. Do our best to represent reality, okay? Likewise, when we remove some ridiculous date from an image, we do our best to represent reality. But let's use this example. Imagine you're doing a video with a bunch of school kids visiting Plattsburgh Quarry. The climax of the visit, and this is a real thing, is when the kids line up wearing hard hats and they watch the explosion in the quarry. Plattsburgh Quarry is just a little distance from here. You may occasionally hear the explosions. And it releases a huge pile of rock, right? So you've been there, you've been assigned to go cover this event. It's a fun event. There's kids are making all kinds of noise and everything like that. And you got to make sure to get here to get this portion. You get set up in a good spot. You got good video of it, and a good video and sound from the tour. You got good video of kids watching the blast. But at just the moment of the blast, your mic drops out. Maybe it goes disconnected, maybe it breaks or something, and you don't get the explosion. You don't get the sound of the explosion. What are you going to do? So you covered this exact same story last year, right? In the exact same way, and you've got the video from that. Just go get the explosion sound from that one and put it in there instead, right? Or maybe you could say, maybe you can get a really good explosion sound on the internet. You can actually get all kinds of explosion sounds online. I can just go it's the same noise, right? It's just a noise. It's practically the same thing. I can just go put that in instead. As we go down that road of moving other audio into our video because we made a mistake or something happened to us in a story, we're definitely going down the road of major ethical violations. So what do you do? Honestly, what you should do, of course, is you should go tell your editor what happened. Okay, ethical guidelines. I do want to show you this. I'm not sure how well this is going to come through on my video here. If not, you can go ahead and look at these links yourself. Look at the straight story, look at the upbeat, and look at the downbeat, and see how they think they differ, right? So I'm going to try to do this, see if it plays okay here. I'm going to play this first.
Childhood dream.
Look how high I go. And she's in the Army for a whole time.
One of those kids that knew exactly what they wanted to be when they grew up. I was going to be a pilot. Darn it, now I was going to fly large aircraft.
She's in war.
We have fuel, we have air.
In my first tour, I was the VIP commander for General Odierno Nation that goes with...
Okay, sorry, I had a little glitch there in the recording. Maybe you got that. Hopefully you did. Let me try to get out. Now I want to play the same video, but what we consider upbeat audio. Ready? Again, if this doesn't come through to you, please watch it on your own. Let's make that full screen and play.
Childhood dream.
Look how high I go. And she's in the Army for a whole time.
One of those kids that knew exactly what they wanted to be when they grew up. I was going to be a pilot. Darn it, now I was going to fly large aircraft.
She's in war.
In my first tour, I was the VIP commander for General Odierno.
Okay, so now we're going to continue now, and now watch the other version. I'm only showing you a little bit of it. Right, here we go. This is the downbeat version.
Childhood dream.
Look how high I go. And she's in the Army for a whole time.
One of those kids that knew exactly what they wanted to be when they grew up. I was going to be a pilot. Darn it, now I was going to fly large aircraft.
She's in war.
In my first tour, I was the VIP commander for General Odierno.
Okay, there you go. For me, at least, it's a very different mood with those changes. Adding in journalism, we really got to consider just tell the story, and realize that we don't want to be adding things that show our bias, that show a bias. We want to recognize our biases that we might carry with us and not do that. I'm not going to show you these links about content-aware stuff. Just know that, especially with AI, all kinds of your Adobe programs in particular give you lots of content-aware choices, which essentially is making up information. It's removing something from the image, perhaps, a person you don't want there, or so on. It's just filling in with images, filling in the image. And that might be good for your family photo that you want to put on Facebook, and it might be good for public relations, but we don't want to do it in audio, in journalism. And this last piece, I think this is one of the last pieces, is this, oh, I've got information. The last slide is about, is actually from the stuff you should know about for the quiz, from the reading. Okay, but we'll go back here and say, I'm going to try to show you this again, but if you can't get it very well here with the audio and everything, please watch it on your own. This is about how minor changes in a video can actually be remarkably biased. And this was an actual case. Oops. And I'm not getting any audio all of a sudden. Why is that? I'm muted. Let's go back to the beginning.
This morning at 4:30, more gunfire is capturing a busy night in the city, including the shooting death of a 16-year-old boy.
And that gunman remains on the loose right now. This shooting happened just before 10 o'clock in the 3700 block of South Albany. Police say a 16-year-old boy was shot to death in a drive-by. The victim's identity has not yet been released.
Meantime, 2 teenagers are wounded on the city's south side. It happened at East 74th. As an 18-year-old man and 16-year-old girl were hit while standing on the sidewalk. The male's in good condition while the girl's expected to recover. And kids on the street, as young as 4, were there to see it all unfold and had a disturbing reaction.
No, I'm not scared of nothing.
When you get older, you gonna stay away from all these guns?
No.
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 What do you want to do when you get older?
I'm gonna have me a gun.
Because I live right here and I don't want none of my family members to get shot.
That is very scary indeed. So far, no suspects are in custody.
Okay, now we're going to see, the video is hard to tell, but the audio you can hear pretty well. So this is the way you may have to watch it on your own. What the raw video that was collected, what it actually showed with this interview with this child here, right?
Custody.
Well, that's what I like to hear. You ain't scared of nothing. Damn. When you get older, you gonna stay away from all these guns?
No.
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 What do you want to do when you get older?
I'm gonna have me a gun.
You are? Why you want to do that? You know what happens?
I'm gonna be the police.
Okay, well then you can have one.
Okay, so he says, I'm going to have me a gun, I'm going to be the police. Of course, by dropping that part out, but that extremely minor edit, well, not minor, but that extremely small edit, created a dramatically different message. And that's the burden that we all face with audio and video, is the choices we make in shooting, the choices we make in editing, and what we bring to those things. So, okay, that's about it for this video. That's what we did in class. So I hope to see you in class soon.